Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to participants, to colleagues here in the room and colleagues online. The moment that our online participants cannot hear me, please do signal and we'll stop. So thank you for joining us, and on behalf of DiploFoundation and the Geneva Internet Platform, I'm Stephanie Borg-Psaila, and together we will go over the July and August developments in digital policy. I would like to introduce some people in the room, starting from Marco and David. David is our wizard here who is helping us solve our problems. Marco Lotti is the bridge between the online participants and us sitting here in the room. We have Andriana, who we cannot see. Andriana will introduce the regional development. Cedric is here, who will take the comments from the floor. We have our special guest here, Chengetai Masango. Chengetai needs no introduction, but I'll just mention that Chengetai, since a few weeks ago, is a member of the Secretariat of the newly launched UN panel on digital cooperation, the UN high-level panel, which was launched by Secretary General Antonio Guterres on the 12th of July, and that is why Chengetai is here. He will share a few more details about this panel. And to my right, we have Claudio Lucenia. Thanks, Claudio, for joining us. Claudio, on behalf of Diplo and the GIP, is following an event here at the Paix, which is the group of governmental experts on lethal autonomous weapon systems. And Claudio will share a few updates from the meeting, which started yesterday. There was also discussions this morning, and they will go on in the afternoon. So I'll give you the floor in a moment. Before I proceed, for those of you joining us for the first time, whether it is here in Geneva or online, here's just a very brief overview of how we'll manage the next hour. So first, we'll have a look at the main events that took place in July and August. Then we'll go over a few of the main developments. Usually there are a lot of developments. This time we're covering 2 months. So we'll just select a few. Then we'll go over the trends that came out there based on the developments. And then we'll look at the upcoming events in September and what to expect. And before we wrap up the briefing, then I'll just share a few updates on the work that we have been doing and that we are also going to do the next few weeks, Diplo and the GIP. A lot of the things we're quite excited about, so there are plans there, but I will share that towards the end. And as usual for our online participants, as soon as we finish this overview, then you'll be able to follow the regional developments. So developments that took place regionally in Asia, Africa, Caribbean, and this is where Andriana will then take you through the regional developments. So if we are fine with this schedule, with this plan for the next hour, I think we can immediately start. So back to the events, we'll go through a few main events that took place in July and August, and one of them is, as I said, it's ongoing. So the list is, I hope it's clear enough. List is behind me. I'll just highlight 3 or 4 events. The first is the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. This is the annual meeting which reviews specific SDGs and which monitors progress for the SDGs. We'll go through the outcomes of the forum in a little bit. A second quite important event was the 10th BRIC Summit, which took place in Johannesburg. And the Johannesburg Declaration, which came out towards the end of the summit, emphasized quite a few things. So it emphasized the support for the UN's 2030 agenda. So again, an emphasis on sustainable development. And this, I can immediately say, is in fact one of the trends for July and August, the special focus on sustainable development. A second point that the declaration emphasized was the need to elaborate rules, norms, and principles of responsible state behavior. So again, we're referring to the BRICS summit. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. 4 out of 5 of these countries are not signatory to the Cybercrime Convention, and this leads me to the next point. In fact, the declaration stressed the need to develop a universal regulatory binding instrument on combating criminal and terrorist use of ICTs. So we have 3 points there focusing on different things: sustainable development, the norms and principles on state behavior, which links to the work of the UN GGE, and the need, the call from BRICS countries for a legal instrument on cybersecurity. We move forward to an event, this time from last week. So the G20, the Digital Economy Ministerial meeting, took place in Salta, Argentina. There was also the task force on the digital economy. And what we noticed from the ministerial declaration was that the leaders, actually the ministers, they agreed on areas of broad alignment, like, for example, measuring the digital economy or the need for digital governance or gender issues. Gender issues were, in fact, quite prominent during the G20 Digital Economy Ministerial meeting. But some of the issues, they were quite silent on, like, for example, how do we tackle the growth and well, as we will see, how to manage the tech industry, which is growing and growing. So these issues, which were a little bit delicate, quite silent on, and probably we would expect that the digital economy ministers would touch upon these things, but other areas where there was broad alignment, those were they worked on and included in the ministerial declaration. And a fourth event, which, as I mentioned, it's taking place this week. It's the group of governmental experts tackling lethal and autonomous weapon systems. It's the second meeting of 2018. The first one was in April, but it's the third meeting of the group. And here, Claudio, this is where I give you the floor to share a few updates from the meeting. So what has been discussed so far? What is new?
Thank you very much, Stephanie. It's my first time, not my first time on Diplo in the briefings, but it's my first time on site. Thank you very much for being here. Just a little bit of a description of the work of the panel. The Convention on Certain Weapons has established this governmental expert group to evaluate the lethal weapon systems that incorporate automation technology features and to assess them against Article 36 of the Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Convention concerning the development and deployment of new weapons. The purposes and the deliverables, the expected results from this group panel are reports and recommendations that, for now, up to this point of the third meeting, they can be summarized as a possible enhancement of the framework of Article 36, or a political declaration, or even an international legally binding instrument. These are the potential outcomes for the group so far. There are very few points of consensus. One of them is that international law, international human rights law, the laws of armed conflict, in particular the international humanitarian law, are applicable not only to automated, but to any weapons in general. There's another consensus, another concern from the high contracting parties that any regulatory or any response to this problem does not hinder or prevent the civil legitimate uses and developments of these kinds of technology. Countries that have also expressed, and this is a recent update, they have also expressed they do not possess and they do not intend to develop weapon systems that cannot be fully controlled, at least in one point of the chain, that cannot be controlled by humans, who can then be held accountable for the use of these weapons, and preserve the chain of accountability that is necessary under international law. Yesterday, Marco was present in the beginning of the morning session. I was present in the second part. We had pretty much a briefing of what happened in the past meeting. Today we were supposed to cover point 6B of the official, 6A of the official agenda concerning the common concepts of understanding. We ended up jumping to point 6B. of the official agenda concerning the human interaction, and then we explored the human meaningful human control over these kinds of systems. We had two interesting presentations that do not exactly concern fully automated systems, but which present interesting characteristics. The presentation from Sweden talked about an ammunition system that does not select and engage on its own. A commander does it, select and engage the target, but then it decides whether to detonate if it finds or if it does not find the target. Then a presentation by US, which is in fact a defense control, a countermeasure for for mines at sea. And after these two presentations, and apart from the other working papers that were submitted in the previous meeting, now we have new submissions from Brazil and a submission from joint submission from Finland and Estonia, exploring an interesting aspect that is to be discussed over the week, which is that we might not be talking about fully automated systems as a category in general, but systems that have performed at certain points in the life cycle critical functions. We hope these concepts grow in consensus for the rest of the week. We'll be following the report, and hopefully with our report from DIPLO at the end of the meeting. Thanks.
Exactly. Thank you, Claudio. Yes, exactly. We'll feature a summary of the discussions in the newsletter. Newsletter is out as usual last day of the month, and we'll also post the policy brief or the summary, more detailed summary of the discussions on the observatory. That brings us to the end of the main events in July and August, and we can go through to the developments this time. So with the help of our barometer, as you can see, the upward arrows indicate the prominence of issues in comparison to the previous months. There are some issues which always have upward arrows, like for example security or economy. Other issues are normally quite quiet, but in this case, for example, this month sustainable development was quite prominent also, but we'll go through that when we come to the trends. I'll just pick, there are many developments, but I'll just highlight a few which they're not necessarily more important than the others, but they stand out quite a bit. So I'll skip to security. Russia plans to present 2 new draft resolutions on cybersecurity at the UNGA. The first proposal advances in the field of information and telecommunications in the context of international security. It will be based on a code of conduct developed by the SCO, and it will introduce a new code of conduct which prohibits the use of ICTs to interfere in the internal affairs of other states. So that's the first proposal. The second proposal is envisioned as an alternative to the Council of Europe Convention on cybercrime, which, as we said, Russia is not part of. And the second proposal is called Countering the Use of ICTs for Criminal Purposes. The announcement of the 2 resolutions came in the beginning of July. In a few days later, the top cybersecurity official, Robert Strayer, said that he was confident that the US and Russia and perhaps China would find common agreement on the norms. So this is a development which we will obviously follow closely. That's on security. I'll just move down to digital economy and the tech giants. I'm sure you heard this also came a few weeks ago. Apple became the world's first $1 trillion public company. It's not the first company to reach this threshold, but it's quite significant that it is a tech company who reached this, who has grown so much. And its stock market value is more than a third the size of the UK economy, if we want to compare the growth, and is larger than the economies of Turkey and Switzerland put together. So that's saying quite something. On the other hand, we saw that the European Commission fined Google quite a large fine, 4.something billion, for illegal practice which harmed competition. So the European Commission has I would say, generally taken a strong stance on anti-competitive measures. And in this case, it involved the Chrome application pre-installed on Android devices. So the European Commission said this is anti-competitive and it harms, ultimately it is the users who are losing out. So quite a big stance there. But this again, especially the development of Apple becoming the first $1 trillion public company, it again brings back the issue of how should the tech companies be managed when they're growing so much. So that's a development on digital economy and the tech giants. Moving forward, there was an interesting case on copyright regarding photographs and copyright related to images, which we download on our computers and we re-upload somewhere else. So quite an interesting case there. An interesting development also on drones, on the laws related to drones because of the growing use. And this is not something only that the US is experiencing. The update, in fact, comes from the US. The Universal Law Commission presented a draft law on how to react to the use of drones, which was met by a lot of criticism. But this is something that many other countries are currently facing. So again, an interesting development on legislation there. In this case, it was meant for states, and in fact, one of the criticisms was that it should be left to federal law. Details on all of these developments are in the barometer and also on the observatory. Another quite important development relates to Google in China. So Google plans to launch a censored search engine. It hasn't confirmed, it hasn't denied this, but it does signify a turning point in Google's approach to censorship. Based on this development, if it is true, but the leaked papers do suggest that it's quite evolving, Google will have to face a public relations battle back in the States, but it will also have to face a large number of regulations in China, and especially regulations related to data localization and allowing the law enforcement to access customer data. Also, a few developments related to telecommunications infrastructure and access. Loon, the first commercial deal went ahead between Google and Kenya. Few new hotspots, but that's infrastructure. So that, I think, summarizes the main or the developments that stand out in July and August. Again, they are in the barometer and in the observatory, and in case we have missed something, and this applies even to the events, please do let us know. And now we'll move to the trends. So based on these developments, based on the developments that we have observed, we summarized 3 trends that come out of these developments, which link together these developments and bring out certain important elements. And this is Shengetai, where you come in. So the special guest. But let me just introduce the trends, because one thing that we have seen over the summer is that the reflections on the digital future have accelerated. So we've been seeing a lot of articles, a lot of commentary, asking what is the future of humanity. So whereas the digital policy development, they do provide the context, but what we've observed is that the discussions are going deeper and broader. And they're quite across the board. So not only philosophers are discussing this, but also the men in the street. People are starting to ask, will citizens have any choices left to make, or will the machines take over? What does the future of humanity look like with all these developments and advancements, AI, automation, laws, What does the future of work look like, again, with automation? So all of these questions, they're getting deeper and broader, but at the same time, we're also seeing initiatives like the Secretary General's new UN high-level panel on digital cooperation, not necessarily the solution, but it's timely, and it's a good initiative. It does offer some hope. So Shangitai, why don't you tell us a bit more about the panel, what it aims to do, time frames, maybe a little bit more than is on.
As you know, the Secretary General on 12th of July announced a high-level panel on digital cooperation, and this panel is co-chaired by Melinda Gates and Jack Ma. And from the Secretariat side, we have two co-executive directors. One of them is Amandeep Gill, who was the former ambassador to India to the Disarmament Conference, and the other one you know very well, Jovan, and he is also so he has left Diplo for a little while as well, and co-leading the Secretariat. I, for myself, have taken temporary leave of the IgBriefings Secretariat to join this Secretariat. So the panel consists of 20 members. Some of them, so 20 high-level members, and the Secretary General has brought them together to advance proposals to strengthen cooperation in the digital space among governments, private sector, civil society, international organizations, technical communities, and basically anybody who's involved in the digital space. Now, we're calling it the digital space because it is much, much broader than the internet space. I mean, anything digital that's, artificial intelligence, autonomous weapons. It does also include everything that you do on the internet, also economy, as you say, the future of work. So it's very broad what the panel can look at, but we're not actually looking at what, we're looking at how we can enhance this cooperation to face the challenges for the future. The panel has not met yet. We did have a virtual meeting on last Thursday, and this was more of an introductory meeting, but there's going to be a full panel meeting in New York on the week of the 24th of September. And we have a few pointers at the moment to where the panel is heading. They more or less will look at a few issues, but then again, as I said, it's more to look at the mechanisms, how to enhance this cooperation. Now, it's not just going to be the panel. We are going to have a very intense engagement process where we're going to go out, seek the views of member states, seek the views of civil society, seek the views of industry, the technical community. I mean, I just went recently to Vanuatu, to the Asia Pacific IGF that we had there, and I was asking people, what are their main issues? Can they please tell us their digital stories? Where do they think that the digital cooperation mechanisms work well? Where do they think that there are gaps? And do they have any suggestions? So we're collecting all this and feeding it to the panel, and then the panel will make their determination to what to look for. So at the end, this is around April, the panel is going to produce a report, and the report is going to suggest ways to enhance this digital cooperation by identifying policy, research, and information gaps, as I just said, and present recommendations for effective and inclusive systems of digital cooperation among all the relevant stakeholders. And we're also very interested in capacity building the capacity. When I was in Vanuatu, these are mainly small island development states. They're all very interested, not just in capacity building, getting the internet link, but also e-literacy, how to use the internet effectively to help develop their economies and their people. I mean, especially with social media, I mean, there was a large concern there about social media and the effect it has on the society with fake news, because there were some incidents of people putting in fake news articles which were causing a little bit of social unrest. But I mean, that's just a small microcosm of what can be looked at. But as I said, it's the whole digital sphere. Our website is, at the moment we only have a page, but our website is going to be live in about 1 or 2 weeks, and it's going to have the whole agenda. And we are also going to have a public call for input, where people can give in their suggestions and also the digital stories for the panel to look at. And as I said, we do have quite an intensive engagement strategy, which still has to be approved by the panel. But once it's approved by the panel, we will publish it on the website. Let me stop there and ask for questions, if I may.
We just go through. Thank you, Schengen. Yeah. Thank you. We just go through the last 2 trends, and then we'll open the floor for some. Rather than questions, I would say some collective thinking.
Collective, sure.
So we'll get the thoughts, we'll get the comments from here in Geneva, and also from our online community, which I think Marco is already collecting. So thanks a lot, Shengetai. I'm sure there are quite some comments on the panel that will come up. But I'll very quickly go through the final 2 trends. So the second one, as I said already, is related to is related to sustainable development. So we know that the target is mainly the year 2030. But in reality, there are targets which are already looming. And by this, I'm referring to targets that need to be met by the year 2020. And that's a year and a half from now. So there is a sense of urgency with regards to these targets, and the urgency was felt quite a lot during the high-level political forum on SDGs in New York in the second week of July. Because one of the main things that the forum noted was that progress is not advancing fast enough, especially for these 2020 targets. So there is this quite a big sense of urgency. Another interesting point was that the private sector is now being recognized as more than ever as a critical development partner and as a leading enabler of SDGs. So there is a lot of focus on the role of the private sector and how the private sector and government can cooperate together on SDGs. Related also to SDGs, the other 2 events which I mentioned at the beginning also touched upon sustainable development. And this is why this sense of urgency and this focus on sustainable development was felt quite significantly in July and August. So going back to the summit of the BRICS countries, again, they emphasized their support for the 2030 agenda, but they also called on developed countries to meet their foreign aid commitments. And they also called on them to provide further support for developing countries. And linking this also to the G20 digital economy ministers, they also refer to sustainable development, but from the point of view of universal connectivity. So they pointed out that universal connectivity is a powerful enabler. And in their ministerial declaration, they agreed to support the national, regional, and global initiatives that promote the connectivity. And in fact, in one of the annexes, Annex 4, if I'm not mistaken, of the ministerial declaration, they did put together some guidelines that can help form policies. So that's the focus on sustainable development. And we'll move to the third trend. The third trend relates to data, and it is quite connected to the GDPR, which came into effect in May, on the 25th of May. So immediately after the law came into effect, we saw the first court cases initiated by Maxrem. Those are ongoing. But we also saw a few developments these past few weeks. For example, ICANN and the WHOIS policy, the German court, the German appellate court, ruled on the issue and said that ICANN cannot stop a registrar from offering or registering domain names without additionally collecting that data, which was the data in question, the technical and administrative contact. This is all related to WHOIS. Meanwhile, a working group is trying to propose a more permanent access model to this WHOIS non-public data, because the current model is temporary. I believe it's just for 1 year, so they're working to propose a more permanent access model that puts it in line with the GDPR provisions. From ICANN, we move to the Department of Commerce. So every year, the Department of Commerce issues a call for input so that the stakeholders can share their ideas on what the international internet policy priorities for the US should be. And we analyze some of the inputs, especially those by the big companies, and what we noticed is quite some concern, again, on data. So big companies are concerned about the extent of the right to be forgotten, so the jurisdiction element of the right to be forgotten. They're concerned about the privacy shield and the adequacy decision framework, and in fact Google, I think, has proposed an alternative arrangement. And they're also concerned about other data-related aspects, including data localization. So from those inputs, we can see how much data governance is a concern for the tech companies, but also for other inputs that were submitted to the Department of Commerce. And from the States, we go to India. India is discussing a bill at the moment, and again, there are data localization provisions which are the center of quite a heated debate there. Because, for example, one of the provisions of the bill states that a copy of the data of the Indian citizens needs to be stored in India. So again, quite some debate, and this is why we think that in July and August, data governance was again one of the most central issues because of all these developments. And that brings me to the end of the trend. So we saw the events, we saw the developments, and we saw the trends. Now, this is where I open the floor for what I called a moment ago collective thinking. So thoughts, comments on what we discussed, on what I mentioned so far, and even on other developments that have mentioned, maybe some things we missed. Please do share any updates that you feel should go into the barometer. David, I don't know how we're going to do with sound. So we'll start with Geneva. Okay. So this is where we take comments. Richard.
Yeah, Claudia, thank you for the update on the laws. I just wanted to reinforce something you mentioned, because not everybody knows some of the details of some of these weapon systems. Actually, fully autonomous systems have been there for a very long time. It's just that they've been limited in space and time. Like mines have been there forever. They're fully autonomous. You mentioned the proximity fuses. When a missile, anti-aircraft missile, gets close to an aircraft, it detonates on its own. It doesn't wait for anybody to tell it to detonate. And then you mentioned I'm sure the U.S. talked about the Hossein weapon systems, which are basically machine guns on aircraft carriers that detect an incoming object and shoot it down. It's an anti-missile system. That's completely autonomous. And there have been incidents where those things make mistakes and they've not shot the right thing down. So it's interesting, because I personally think that the distinction has to be made between something that's going to fly all over the world and decide to shoot, rather than things which are limited in space and time, which we already have.
That geographic limitation, the kind of engagement has been also against different things.
Just a sound check to see whether our online colleagues are hearing the comments from Geneva. Okay, but they're hearing. They can. All right. Okay. Thank you, Marco. Let me just see whether there are other comments here. Then Marco, we'll take the comments from online. Sure.
I had a question for Changai. So I've seen from the Twitter feed that you've been traveling to Vanuatu and that one of the co-directors, Amandine, has been to New York already. So you are already engaging with stakeholders, but are some of the panelists there with you, or will you always be the filter of we go out, we collect the info, and we bring it back?
No, in Vanuatu, it's been surplus there. And next week, Amandine and myself will be going to Paris, and there's going to be Kathy, sorry, I've forgotten her, Mulligan. Yes, she's going to be there as well. So where we can, we are going to tie up with a panel member.
Take the comments, Marco, from our online colleagues.
Yes, there was a first reaction from Marilia about laws, autonomous weapons. She was saying that the consensus being adopted among laws participants says that the man in the loop is essential for accountability. In other cybersecurity forums, there is a discussion on whether this principle will be still feasible with the introduction of artificial intelligence, as it will accelerate the time of decision response and assessment to a level that is not feasible for humans. So maybe this is for Claudio, for the discussions of today and yesterday. How are participants of laws tackling this point? Have they tackled it already? Has it emerged in the discussion?
Thank you very much, Maria. As I mentioned, there is a consensus that and this is what, oh sorry,
I'm sorry to
we still have
interrupt you.
the sound issue.
Thank you.
Yeah. This was relevant enough for me to take note of a simple sentence that came by in the discussion today, is that humans must be accountable and bear the responsibility for the weapons they use. This is the general thought of the high contracting parties to the discussion so far. Of course, these concepts haven't been worked to the point of maturity yet. We're going to be, I believe we're going to be evolving over the week. But this seems to tackle, at least to tackle the issue that Maria put. This is the direction in which the panel is moving here, the group is moving here.
Thank you, Claudia. Yes, sir. Yes, just summarize the Marco.
One is from Nigel addressing...
David, can he...
There is no need for me to have the microphone. I know.
Oh, all right.
One is, there is a question from Nigel to Chengetai, and he's asking, can I ask Chengetai whether the panel will be present for the discussions at the IGF in Paris? And another one from for Chengetai from Abdella Jalil, if I pronounce it well. My question to Chengetai is about stakeholder balance in the members of the panel. I seem to notice that there is more government and private sector representation than civil society.
Thank you, Marco, for the question. There's a lot of interest on both the UN panel. So Chengetai, thanks again for being here. and Claude, of course.
For the panel members being present at the IGF, I'm not aware of panel members who are going to be aware, who are going to be there at the IGF, but I can investigate. I just haven't checked. But the high-level panel secretariat, some of us are going to be there, definitely. And as for the balance, as you know, it's only 20 people, so it's very, very difficult to have a complete representation of every single stakeholder group. And the Secretary General, I'm sure, tried his best. And it may turn out, but also, you know, there are some people there who represent more than one stakeholder group. Sorry for always turning to Vint Cerf, but for Vint Cerf, I mean, he works for Google, but he is also very strong in the technical community. So I think those types of multi-hat people were also taken advantage of.
Thank you, Shankitai. A question from my end.
Yes.
I know we have Jovan to ask, but I'll ask you. Will the panel tackle digital policy in the widest sense, so topics in general, or are there specific focus areas that the panel will focus on?
At the moment, it seems that the trend is that they are going to focus on some specific areas, because I mean, the digital space is so wide. I mean, if you really want to do something, you do have to focus in on some things. And as I said, I mean, there's two things. There's focusing on the issues, and then also focusing on the overall mechanisms as such. So, as I said, again, it's not yet fully decided. The real decision will come September 24th when we have the face-to-face meeting, but it seems like a two-pronged approach may take shape.
Thank you, Shankitai. Christiane, question here?
Thank you, yes. Well, I think I want to react at the answer that you gave, Nigel. Certainly from my and I think Canada's point of view, I think we need to count on you to tell your members on September 24th that they need to be at the IGF. It is the one place where they will meet with a very wide variety of stakeholders, and if they need to form an opinion, I don't think that there's an existing forum which would be a better place for them to be. So I'm counting on you to relay that message in the strongest possible terms, because the UN cannot do digital cooperation and then snub the one forum that it has created for itself in this process. So I'm counting on you to pass along that message.
Okay. Noted, and I remain neutral. Yes.
But with Shankitai on the panel, I think the IGF is, if there's a big fan of the IGF,
Yeah.
it must be Shankitai himself. All right, perfect. Are there any more comments either here or online? Here's the right, Marco. Fine. All right, very good. So despite starting a bit late, we're still on schedule.
We'll move on to see what events in September, what they hold in store.
We haven't listed down the high-level panel, but we'll add it. I will also add it on the observatory. A few events going on there. There's the Human Rights Council 39th session, and there's a high-level meeting. It's also on the 24th, also quite an important meeting on financing the 2030 agenda. This is an event convened also by the Secretary General. So the calendar looks a bit short for September. Maybe events will pop up again. If we're missing something, please let us know. Christiane, sure.
A question, because I thought that Switzerland was organizing a Geneva dialogues on behavior in responsible behavior in cyberspace, and my understanding was they were supposed to be launching something in September, and I don't see it on your calendar, so I am perplexed.
Actually, if I'm not mistaken, the next event, the next big event is in November, 1st and 2nd, but I'll get updates and we'll also post on the observatory. But as far as I know, nothing as such is planned for September. The big event is in November. So that's from the Swiss event. And we'll finally, before we wrap up, we take a look at what we're working on and what we plan to work on in the coming weeks. So this is we're quite excited about some work at Diplo and the GIP. The first, I haven't listed it there, but obviously we're very proud of Jovan's appointment to the UN, together with Shankitai and the other members. Jovan is the co-executive chair of the Secretariat, so that was quite a big deal for us at Diplo and the GIP. We're very proud and happy, and I think the Diplo team will join me in congratulating Jovan for that, and obviously the other members. We're, as usual, at the end of the month, we have the newsletter. Newsletter is out on the last day of the month, 31st October. I think it's Friday. We're also launching the new taxonomy of the observatory. So the taxonomy is the underlying structure what we do on the observatory, what we do here, the content that we deliver here in the briefing, and also what we deliver via the newsletter and other activities and programs that we do. So after months of development, we're updating the taxonomy to reflect the recent developments. For example, inclusive finance is now quite a prominent issue. So is blockchain. Cryptocurrency, it was already on the taxonomy. Some issues are being merged, some are surfacing for the first time as issues. And we'll be launching that very soon together with a new team of curators. Some of them are joining us here for the briefing. So thank you for all the work that the curators and the Diplo team do behind the work of the observatory. The presenters here, Jovan, in this case myself, and from time to time we have guests, we're the face here presenting the work that we do and the analysis that we do, but in reality there's quite a big team supporting all the work. And once again, I thank you for all the work that you do. Many people behind the scenes, but the work that they do is extremely important behind what you're saying here. So launch of the new taxonomy. We're also launching Diplo's AI lab. So the artificial intelligence lab will bring together a few areas, a few programs, face-to-face workshops, online courses, and all the research that we're doing on AI. So we're launching that under the umbrella of Diplo's AI lab. And in October, the online course with a face-to-face segment will launch on the 8th of October, called Introduction to Digital Policy and Diplomacy, which I have to mention. It's a Geneva-based course, so anyone who would like more information on that, there are either some leaflets on the back, Cedric tells me that there are, or you can ask one of us. And that brings me to the end of all the developments that took place in July and August, and a little peep on what to expect in the coming weeks. I think this is where I thank all of you here for joining us in Geneva and online. We're sorry about the sound issues at the beginning, but our team they managed to resolve the issues. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Claudio. Thank you, Shengetai, for being here as the special guest. And we'll meet again next month. Download the newsletter. It's out on Friday. So thank you again. And a short note for our online participants. I won't move away from the mic, but please stay tuned to see the regional development. So Andriana will take you through the regional developments. One of them is presented by Claudio, although he's here. But we'll use your hands with
the video doesn't work today. I can't do it online.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Stephanie, for the roundup of the developments, and thank you, Marco, for moderating the online conversation and for facilitating the questions. Now, we are going to start with the regional updates. The first update we will hear is from Armita, who will tell us what happened in the Asia countries in July and August. Amrita, please.
Welcome to the regional update from Asia for the month of August. This month, the Australian government released the Draft Telecommunication and Other Legislation Amendment Bill 2018, also known as the Assistance and Access Bill, which aims to provide law enforcement and security agencies power to respond to the challenges posed by encryption. Some of the discussions related to the bill is the obligation of service providers and producers to work with the law enforcement agencies, power of law enforcement to seize information directly from a device, and allowing government operators to access more data through current warrants. The bill is open for public comments till 10 September. In Malaysia, the current government repealed the fake news legislation of the previous government that allowed authorities to set fines and jail people up to 6 years if found guilty of spreading fake news, which many believed to be against freedom of expression. In India, the Ministry of Electronics and IT is seeking public comments on the Personal Data Protection Bill by the Justice Sri Krishna Committee by 10th September. Some of the salient features of the draft include defining personal data and sensitive data, the need for consent to process data, providing certain rights to data principals, extending the law to data fiduciaries who may be located overseas, accountability and transparency measures for platforms, setting up of an independent data protection authority, and financial penalties for non-compliance. Some of the most discussed aspects of this bill include the mandate of maintaining a copy of the data locally, users not having complete ownership of their data, and the role of authorities and the state to process data even without consent.
Thank you very much, Amrita. Now we will hear from Andre Edwards, who will bring us the updates from the Caribbean region.
Andre Edwards with Caribbean updates. Caribbean representative appointed to ARIN Board of Trustees. The American Registry for Internet Numbers, ARIN, announced that during their July 31st, 2018 Board of Trustees meeting, ARIN trustees unanimously agreed to appoint Ms. Regina Frazier to serve a one-year term on the ARIN Board of Trustees effective 1st January 2019 and an observer status in the interim period. The appointment is part of ARIN trustees' ongoing commitment to board diversity and fulfills the April call for volunteers of Caribbean background. BIT Inc.'s blockchain deal with the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin. Barbados-based fintech startup BIT has signed a memorandum of understanding with the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin. The parties signed the MOU in order to develop a central bank digital currency to facilitate financial payments within the monetary union of Curacao and St. Martin. Per the announcement, the bank is looking to reduce the level of cash usage within the monetary union and facilitate more secure, more anti-money laundering and know your customer compliant transactions between the islands. Cuba tests nationwide internet services. Cuba is one of the Western Hemisphere's least connected countries. Cuba's government provided free internet to the communist-run islands, more than 5 million cell phone users, in an 8-hour test before it launches sales of the service. The state-run telecommunications monopoly announced a trial, marking the first time internet services were available nationwide. Trinidad and Tobago TSCTs rolls out blockchain technology. TSCT's Vice President, Supply Chain and Enterprise Portfolio Management, Kano Cox, at Canto's 34th Annual Conference and Trade Exhibition in Panama, shared some insights and expertise gained from deploying blockchain for its homegrown e-tender solution. The e-tender software as a service facility is an online market forum for buyers and sellers specifically to receive information on and respond to projects in the area of procurement for public or private tenders.
Thank you very much, Andre. And now we are going to the MENA region with updates from Noha Fatih. Noha, over to you.
Hello, this is Noha Fatih. I cover internet governance updates in the Middle East and North Africa region. The first update is from Iran, where the telecommunications company of Iran rerouted Telegram app traffic for 1 hour on the 30th of July, which is at loggerheads with the Iranian computer crimes law that stipulates a fine up to 2 years in prison and a maximum 40 million Iranian rials for such a crime. The Iranian telecommunications minister tweeted on the same day acknowledging the engagement of the company in changing its topology and consolidating its provincial network in 2 Iranian cities. He added, if confirmed, the company's misdeed, whether intentional or not, will trigger a heavy fine. The second update is from Turkey. In the light of the financial crisis that Turkey is going through, a clampdown on social media was instigated when the government embarked on investigations to the manipulative stories on media and operational social media accounts that threaten social peace, unity, and economic security, as clarified by the Chief Prosecutor's Office. Additionally, a judicial investigation has been launched into 346 social media accounts that shared posts to provoke the rise in the dollar exchange rate as reported by the Turkish Interior Ministry. And finally, the Turkish Financial Crime Investigation Board is also investigating the fake news that aimed at manipulating the economy.
Thank you, Noha. And now we'll hear from Foncham Dennis, who will bring us updates from Africa. Foncham, go ahead.
From Cameroon, I am Foncham Dennis with Internet Governance updates for the month of August for the African region. I start in Uganda, where a social media tax has been implemented by government. Following a social media tax in Uganda, where mobile phone users pay a daily charge to access social media sites like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Twitter, Facebook threatens to suspend infrastructure investment in this country. Mr. Kojo Buake, Facebook Africa Public Policy Manager, said he has informed the Uganda Communication Commission that their present business model will be affected by the daily social media tax. It should be noted that Facebook is in the process of providing free internet access on all its sites in 42 African countries under the Free Basics Initiative project. Secondly, in South Africa, Liquid Telecom, a cable provider and a Microsoft partner who is currently using its fiber to provide express route service to 8 African countries using peering locations in Europe, has provided the first express route with peering locations in Africa to the Western Cape government and intend to provide this service to many other customers. This service enables customers to connect directly to the Azure cloud with traffic exchange locally in Africa. Later this year, Liquid Telecom intends to operate its South African data center and will provide express route directly to its African-based Azure cloud. All traffic will be routed in Africa and latency will be reduced. And finally, Twitter, a social media network, indicated that 5 of the 21 more countries to benefit from its lightweight Android app will be from Africa and include Ghana, Kenya, Morocco, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. 46 countries are currently using this app. Twitter Lite is user-friendly, fast, and is suitable for mobile users on slow networks or 2G networks who still constitute 45% of global users. This category of users can use this app to connect to the world and be informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Foncham, and thank you once again to Amrita, Andre, and Noha for sharing the updates from their regions. Now we are done with our today's briefing. I would like to once again remind you that we will be sending the recording of today's briefing as well as the presentation. Also, I would like to remind you that all the developments that Stephanie mentioned are on the observatory at dig.watch. Another reminder is that you can download our newsletter on Friday at dig.watch/newsletter. Thank you very much for attending, and I will see you on September 25th.